So welcome everyone. Hopefully I might be letting a few people in as we're talking. So if I look slightly distracted at points, it was just me reacting to the waiting room, just like now. Um, but otherwise, we can make a start on today's webinar, which is how to use social media to find, build, and engage your alumni network. I am Sarah Jane. I'm the communications lead at Future First. Do feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box at any time. And do feel free to put questions in there as well. I will try and answer most of them at the end. But yeah, if there's anything pressing, just let us know and I will try and respond as soon as I can. Um, I am joined today by my colleague Mark, who is our head of membership. And Mark is going to start us off with a little word about what Future First do.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sarah. Yeah, thank you for the introduction. My name's Mark. I am the head of membership for Future First. So you may have spoke to me directly if you're already a member. You may have sent us an inquiry and got a message from me, or I might be a brand new face to you. But any which way around, me and my team work with all the schools across the country and help them to get the most out of their membership and make sure that they are able to get those alumni into schools. So I think Sarah Jane wanted me just to start by talking about Future First generally and who we are. So Future First, we're a social mobility charity. So I think sometimes we get sort of put into the wrong bracket as education charities, and that's where we work. We're not. We're here about social mobility. So we work with schools to help schools to get relatable role models into schools to inspire young people. The term that we use around a lot in a lot of our literature and when we're talking about these things is you can't be what you can't see. And for me, that's a really simple way of thinking about what it is that Future First do. If you are surrounded by lots of people who work in a similar industry, if your mom, your dad, your brother are all teachers, the chances of you becoming a teacher is a lot higher than average. And if your mom, your dad, your brother are all mechanics, the chances of you becoming a mechanic are a lot higher than average. And I think what we're trying to do here is help schools to put those relatable role models in front of people and let young people see that the world is a wide place and there's lots of different jobs and lots of different things that might be a good fit for them. So our mission is there on the screen. I won't read it out to you, but hopefully what I've just said sort of covers that off and makes a lot of sense of it. And effectively, what we're hoping to get to a stage here in the country is where all state schools have a thriving alumni network that support their current students. And that's what we're here to do, and that's who we're here. That's how we're here to try to help. That's me, Sarah Jane.
Thank you, Mark. Right, so why are we here today? Well, we're here to talk about social media and how is that relevant to building your alumni networks. Um, I would say social media is incredibly powerful, if only because of its huge reach. Um, if you think of it, yes, I am sure you know people who are not on social media. You will know people who are not a lot on social media, but realistically, most people are at least on one social media platform, if not multiple. So a lot of the people that you are looking for are out there ready for you to find and engage with. The other benefit, of course, of social media is that you've got this massive network at pretty much no cost. Um, yes, you can advertise, but I would argue that when you are doing what you're doing and trying to reach your alumni, there's very little reason for you to put money behind advertising. You can do most of it for free, which, of course, when we have limited resources, is always really welcome. Some platforms, I'm thinking particularly of LinkedIn here, are excellent to help you track where your students have gone on to, um, which is, of course, an important part of your missions and the data that you have to collect. Um, it's also a really good place for you to find supporters and attendees for your events and for your fundraising efforts. And of course, it's a great publicity opportunity. It's a way to showcase what you're doing at the school. And this could be showcasing what you're doing now, but also showcasing what your students have become. So lots of opportunities reside in social media. Before we move on to looking at each platform individually and what you could be doing with each one, I wanted to cover a few basics. And my first basic as a communications person, I would say never, ever, ever do social media just because you feel you have to. Actually, always start with your objectives in mind. When it comes to your alumni network, those objectives could be looking like engaging them. So keeping your alumni connected with each other and with the school. It could be about recruitment. So you might want to attract future students by showcasing the stories of your past students. It could be fundraising. A lot of your alumni will feel really connected to their school and will be wanting to give back in some way or another. And it could also be, of course, career support. You will have seen in the latest Gatsby benchmarks update that there is now an expectation that you work with your alumni to improve your careers program. And so finding them on social media and getting advice from them and also getting work opportunities from your alumni is a really valuable objective to have uh, in the next few months, years. A few basics. I would say representation matters. And by that, I mean if you're only showcasing what is currently happening at the school, your alumni might not feel that this is the page for them or that this is where they need to engage, and they might feel a little bit adrift. But if you make sure that you showcase both what is currently happening at the school and what has happened or what your alumni have gone on to, what they've become, that gives your alumni a sense of this is also my place and this is also um, where I belong. And of course, that goes straight to the next part, which says we all need to belong. We love to belong to a group. You know, we all have our little tribes and we really want to be part of that tribe. So do make sure that you recognize that your alumni is part of that school community. This is what brings them back and what holds them um, into your support community. Um, we all like having a sense of purpose. Studies show that time and over again that people are really driven by a sense of purpose, a greater purpose. So don't ever be afraid to ask of your alumni that they come back and help in some way or another. Um, we love getting involved and we love being supportive of our community. Consistency is important, but I'm going to caveat that a little bit. Um, I will say, sorry, just letting someone in. I will say that don't feel like you have to post every minute of every day. That is too much work and it is really stressful. Um, However, what I'm often seeing out there is there might be a flurry of activity because you've got your summer school fair, say. Um, so there's lots of activity in June, and then for the next 6 months, nothing happens on your social media because it's forgotten. Um, that isn't great, and it's not going to help you because if your page is inactive, the algorithms on all of those social media platforms are not going to push your content as far as it would if you were posting regularly. So consider maybe small steps and small things you can do regularly. Maybe post fortnightly or once a week, um, and keep it going in that way rather than having a lot, or nothing at all. Um, and then finally, I'm a huge believer in listening to the voice of lived experience. So please do talk to your alumni and find out what makes them tick. What is it that they want to see? What content do they want to see? What platforms do they prefer? How do they want to be involved? Do feel free to ask them for their opinion and use that to drive your social media strategy. Now we're going to start dipping into all of these different social media platforms. And I've deliberately started with LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a professional networking platform. And I would say probably has the greatest value to you if you're trying to build your alumni network with a view of tracking where your students have gone on to, getting careers advice, and engaging them in your careers education programs. So, my top tips on LinkedIn would be, first of all, make sure your school has a LinkedIn page. We come across quite a few of our schools that do not have a LinkedIn page set up. What that means is that if a student wants to connect with you, they have nowhere to go and they will input something random in there and then it's not connected to you. But if you have a LinkedIn page, once your former students create their profile, they can connect directly with the school and then you can see everyone who has gone to the school. It makes it a lot easier for you to track your former students. So do start with having your LinkedIn page set up. However, there's a counter to this. Uh, People connect with people. And so I would say make sure you have your LinkedIn page so people can connect to the school. But once you know who your former students are, I would absolutely connect with them using your professional profile. Um, I know some people feel hesitant about connecting with students on social media and their personal profile. I would argue that this needn't apply on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is very much about your professional network and your professional persona. So as their teacher, I think there is value in you connecting with former students. And very little risk as well, because LinkedIn does not share a lot of your personal data. And in theory, this is not the place where you're going to be posting pictures of your family and your dog and your cat and whatever else you might be posting on other social media platforms. It is very much about you building connections and professional connections. So I would strongly recommend that you connect with your students using your professional profile. If you absolutely must, then create a separate profile that is just for connecting with other people. Um, but ideally, you have one profile, it's your professional profile. You connect with your students that way. Then I would say good practice would be to publish your posts on the schools page and share those on your profile. And the reason I'm saying that is that people may or may not follow the school page and they will miss some information if it's only posted on the school page. If you actually share it on your profile, you're amplifying that message. You are helping, again, the algorithm feels like, oh, someone's shared it, it must be important. And it gets distributed a bit more widely and more people see it. Um, sorry. So always start with the schools page and then share on your profile is just really good practice. If you want engagement, ask questions. Please ask questions. And by that, I mean you could post something like, if you've gone to our school, what would be your top tips for to students taking their GCSEs or A levels this year? It could be as simple as that. It could be, what is your best memory of going to set school? What was your favorite place at school? Who was your favorite teacher? What was your favorite topic? It doesn't matter. You can go, what would be top tip for CVs, for interview questions? Just ask questions. People feel compelled to answer when you ask a question. And the other part of that, I would also say, always be very clear on your call to action. Make sure that people feel it's applicable to them. So, say you're organizing a careers carousel, you might want to look at who you have already. If I'm assuming here you've already done a bit of work and you've got a few people there, but say you really want someone in engineering, and preferably a woman, actually, you could also say that. You could actually post that very specific question and say, if you're a woman that attended this school and you're now working in engineering or STEM or whatever that might be, could you please come and talk? If it is specific, people will feel, again, more compelled because it's relevant to them or they feel represented, targeted. So where you can, be clear on your call to action and what you're asking people. Um, Similarly, I would say don't be afraid to message people privately. Again, say you've got a careers carousel and you've identified that you've got no one working in uh, the NHS and you really want someone from the NHS to come and talk at your careers carousel. Why don't you look through your school's page and your former students, see if anyone is working for the NHS and contact them directly? I think it's worth recognizing that social media feeds move really rapidly. So not everyone is going to see a post. It doesn't matter how or when you share it. It falls down and then people forget basically. So even if they've seen it, they might not react in time. They might go, "Oh, I'll do that later," and then forget. So do feel free to message people privately with your very specific ask. I see that you're working in the NHS. We could really use someone to come to our careers carousel. Would you mind? Um, and then one of my other top tip would be, why don't you set up your students already at the end of their school career with a LinkedIn profile? This has multiple benefits. First is LinkedIn is definitely a really good place for them to be when they will start entering the world of work. It is full of job opportunities. It is an opportunity to network with other people. Um, so you will set them up well by getting them to have a LinkedIn profile. And whilst you're doing so, you can make sure that they are indeed connected to your school, which means that in the future, it'll be easier for you to find them and track them. So these are my top tips for LinkedIn. Then let's move on to Facebook. I think nowadays the value in Facebook is all about community groups and building communities. If you think of if you are on Facebook and how you use it and what you see the most, it is probably all the groups that you're in. So this may be your local selling site. This may be at the time of COVID, there was lots of help groups set up in local communities. This might be anything to do with, say, your local park, and there's a support group for your local park. So there's a lot of communities on Facebook, and they're actually more relevant to you than you might think. So my top tips would be, first and foremost, if you can, if you have the ability, consider creating a group for your alumni that is different than your main schools page. Your main schools page really is there as an advertising mechanism. But if you had a group, and I'm being very specific here on the vocabulary, so you're not creating a page, you are creating a group for your alumni where they can network and engage with each other. You are building a community that you can then tap into, and you can keep it going as well. I would, however, recommend that if you can, you get some of your alumni to be administrators of the page so that it takes something off your to-do list. So be part of it, but actually get someone else to manage it if you can. Um, do infiltrate your local community pages. So we're saying you have your local support pages, you have your local selling pages. Get on there because whenever you have an event, you'll get a lot more traction if you go on there and say, hey, this such and such school is setting up an event, and we're really looking for people who used to go to the school or people in the local community who can come and talk about whatever it is you're trying to present on that day. Um, there is a bigger chance that people will see it than if you just post it on your main page. So do get into those community pages and infiltrate them and post in them. Um, I would also make sure that you share school updates and events in a way that former students can see them, feel invited, and can still feel part of your community. So again, feel free to post it in your alumni group if you have one, or share those onto the local pages saying, we'd love to see our alt students come to the school fair, whatever that might be, whatever the event might be. So do make sure that you keep connecting, but see it as your place for community where people get together in groups and act in that group. Instagram, if you're familiar with Instagram, is all about images. It's all about the photos, the images. So this might require a bit more thinking when you're looking at your alumni. Um, but you could make a point of sharing new and old images to make sure that your both audiences are engaged at all time. And you could have a few things like a Throwback Thursday series where you post old photos of your students and ask people if they recognize themselves and to share it with the people that they used to go to school with. Um, you could also have a Where Am I Wednesday and pick a part of the school where you can say, can you say where I am? It could be, or you're in the science block, or you're in the PE locker room, whatever that might be. Um, but have a bit of a game that you could make it and keep going. Um, Another thing that is really useful on Instagram because it can get quite overwhelming when you're faced with loads and loads of images. You can actually separate your content using the highlights feature to organize your stories. And so you could have alumni success stories that you post on there. It could be just a photo of one of your alumni with, um, I studied at such and such school and now I'm doing this. You can have another tab, which is for school events, where people can go what's happening, can go and see what's happening. And then another one, which could be purely for memories. Nostalgia is a really big pull for a lot of your alumni. So make sure that you tap into that as well, just that reminiscing and those moments that were important to them is quite useful to keep them engaged. Um, TikTok, and I know some people are cringing in the audience right now, thinking we can't possibly put the kids on TikTok. I'm going to disagree slightly with that. First of all, this is where a lot of your younger audience is going to be. Um, the average age, surprisingly, the average age of the audience on TikTok is about 35. But really, if you look at the bulk of the audience, it is younger than that. It's just that a few people are much older and drag that number up. But really, you're looking at 16 to 24 is your key audience on there. That means that it's great for your older students, but also for your recent alumni and the people who have just left, what we call the near peers. Um, and a lot of them are going on there as an education platform. And again, you might be going like, oh, I'm not sure about this, but it is really useful. There is a lot of how to and there's a lot of good content out there. So you could post a day in the life videos, and on that, this could be a day in the life of the school. But of course, it could also be a day in the life of a former students, them showing what is going on in their life at the moment, what their work is looking like. And you could use that as part of the content that you use in lessons or in careers education. I would also consider integrating video making in your coursework. And again, I'm sure some people are a bit worried, but you could use it as an opportunity for drama. They could create a script and film a video. It could be English about storytelling. There's a lot of really good opportunities to explore video storytelling. It could be PSHE. There was a school in the news just 2 weeks ago, or even last week, where they created a video about toxic masculinity and published it on TikTok. So there's a lot of opportunities where you could create the content with the students. Um, I will caveat that this is really only applicable for students over the age of 13 and ideally probably more like 14. So we're talking year 10 to year 13. I would not recommend that you engage year sevens on TikTok generally. This isn't the platform for them yet. Um, You can also get your alumni to share their stories and their memories, or share their education and career journeys, where they've gone on to. And you could share that on your TikTok page. This is really valuable information for people who are about to enter the world of work and might be considering what their next move could be or where they want to go on to next. Um, And then and then we end our tour of the different social media platform with X, formerly known as Twitter. And I have put a question mark on this one. How do you solve X? Um, it was a great platform, particularly for news sharing and rapid information sharing. However, um, the engagement rate has dropped dramatically. And after the recent US election, there's been a huge exodus as well on X. So there's not a lot of people who are still engaging with the platform. They might still have a profile, but they're not actually engaging with it. And it may well have been a lot of schools were quite active actually on Twitter and might find that there's not much happening on there anymore. And at the same time, if you are working in social media at all, you might have noticed that X has removed the ability for you to see your analytics unless you are actually a paying profile. So we have been faced with the same issue here at Future First, and we've been asking ourselves for a while, what are we going to do? There are two alternatives, obvious alternatives out there. One is Threads, which is owned by Meta, which is also the owner of Facebook and Instagram. Um, the content is slightly longer on Threads than on X. So Threads, I think, allows up to 500 characters, so almost double what you'd get on Twitter. It has a slightly larger user base because it was launched a little while ago and it's had a bit of a head start. And then we're going to compare that to Blue Sky, which is another platform.
Mm.
Blue Sky is owned by a former employee of Twitter. It has a decentralized ownership. So it is not owned by one company in particular, which is important for some people. It is probably the most similar to Twitter, and I'm specifically saying Twitter, not X. It is very much looking like what Twitter used to look like. So if you really liked Twitter, I would say that's the place to go. And whilst it has a smaller user base than Threads, it has better engagement rates. Um, so for us as a charity, we have chosen to go to Blue Sky. Um, I can't comment on how efficient this is going to be because we've literally just started. But I am quite happy to do an update in a year's time once we've given it a proper shot, and I'll tell you how it's going for us if you're at all interested. Um, the challenge, of course, is that we are starting from scratch, so we're having to build a whole new user base. But what we find on Blue Sky, what tipped it for us to Blue Sky, is that a lot of the people in our space are on there, journalists, but also other social media charity, social mobility charities are on there, and other charities that we work with quite closely, other stakeholders that we work with quite closely, which is why we've moved to Blue Sky. But as I said, this is a question mark, and we'll see, and I'll tell you in a year's time how we're doing and whether this was the right or wrong decision to make. And finally, I can't really not talk about the Future First Hub. So if you are a member of Future First, you have access to the hub, and the hub is modeled on a social media platform. So I feel like it has its place in this webinar. Um, the hub is the place where you as a school can connect your former students with your current students in a really, really safe way. It is built like a vault. Genuinely, it is locked down. There's a lot of moderation going on. So it keeps, if you are nervous about putting students on social media, this is really, really a safe place to do it. And it also is at the same time a platform where you can manage all your contacts in one place. So I'll give you a few top tips if you are on the hub, if you are a member and you have the hub. Um, I will say you might be asking yourself right now, well, why would I need social media if I have the hub, or why would I need the hub if I have social media? Well, as I said, the hub is a really secure space for you to connect your former students and your current students. It has also got all the data that you need. It makes your data tracking really easily. So it has plenty of benefits. But of course, it is a very enclosed space. So there is still value in you having social media platforms out there. And I would say, one of the things I'd recommend is that you do a campaign. If you have the hub, do a campaign to get on your other social media channels to encourage your former students to sign on to the hub, explaining why you're doing that and why you believe it's a good place to be. Mainly, I think the safety aspect is probably your best bet on that. Um, do make sure that if you are listing your events on social media, make sure you list them on the hub as well. It's a really good place for you to have. You might as well make the most of it. Remember that you can email your alumni directly from the hub. And if you don't know how, please contact Mark's team. They'll send you a really handy little video on how to do that. And then, as always, if you have the hub, please sign up your leavers at the end of each year so that they are on there and you have your data ready for tracking going forward. Now, I know that many of you are sitting there just going, like, I haven't got the time. And I can't blame you. You are probably under-resourced like most schools. And it's tricky to fit everything in. There's no denying that. So there are ways, though, where you can lighten the load a little bit. And the first one is, and I'm talking from experience as a comms person, is create a content calendar. There is nothing worse than sitting there at the start of the week and go like, what am I going to post this week? If you have that planned in advance, it makes your life so much easier. So, give it a couple of hours, maybe at the start of a month, at the start of a term, just to have an idea of what you're going to roughly talk about. And it doesn't have to be a post by post breakdown, but actually a theme. Um, and to help you out there, you could look at, awareness days. There is National Apprenticeship Week coming up. There is National Careers Week coming up. There's International Women's Day. These are all the kind of campaigns that you can use to guide you on what to use your content and what you're going to ask. It could be popular hashtags. We talked about Throwback Thursday is a really popular hashtag, so you can use that to plan your content. Um, there might be other campaigns happening at the same time, or the natural ebb and flow of your calendar. New start of the school year, Christmas is just a theme in itself, let's face it. It could be GCSE and A levels time. There's lots of things out there that you can use to build your diary. And if you can, consider scheduling your posts. You can do that directly into each platform, or you can use a tool. Some of them are quite expensive though, so be mindful of that. We're using at Future First, got open, we're using Later. We're not commissioned to advertise for them, by the way, but it is a free tool. That's why we're using it. Not going to lie. Um, and then another way, of course, is to repurpose content across each platform. Think of how you might use it. I'm not talking about just duplicating it, although sometimes there is value in it. The same post and image can go on all of your platform if it's about an event. But in other cases, well, I'm going to take the example of this webinar. I'm delivering this webinar now. And then on the back of that, I will use the content I created for this webinar to create a guide that will go back to our member schools as a reference and as a resource for them to use. So you could look as well at how you keep reusing your content in different ways. And then I would say get the kids involved. It doesn't have to be your current students if you're a bit nervous. I also understand that. It's not always that easy, but you'll find that you have alumni who are undoubtedly working in communication, social media, marketing, who might have great knowledge of all this and might be able to help as a volunteer. And also, as I said multiple times, do ask for content. They want to get involved. This is an opportunity for them to tell others what they've done and how they've succeeded. All right, I'm going to stop sharing briefly so that we can take questions. So feel free to post them in the the chat box. Oh, great question. Could it be considered a GDPR breach for school staff to contact former students on social media? Um, Not quite. I can see why people would feel nervous about that. Um, the reality is that you can contact anyone on social media. There is implied consent by the moment they accept an invitation. In the same way that, I was saying, please help your students create a LinkedIn profile before they leave. Obviously, you would do that with their consent. Um, and if there's consent, clear consent, then it isn't a breach. I also think you would have a valid argument in some cases, what is called a legitimate interest. So if you contact people on LinkedIn to find out where they've gone on to, this is one of the requirements of the school to track destinations data. I would say no. I know some schools are nervous about people tagging other people on old photos. Again, I think you'll find if you have a public profile on social media, there is an implied consent. And so it shouldn't be a GDPR issue at that point. Uh, okay. So if a school doesn't want to post photos and videos of students due to safeguarding, what alternatives are available? The I think the schools will be quite experts in how you make sure that you take the right photos that don't expose your students. However, you remember I recommended that you engage your students maybe in creating TikTok videos. Um, if I take the example of the school that did the video on toxic masculinity, the teachers were the ones speaking. So you could still get your students to write the script and film it and actually engage your staff to be the actors or the spokespeople so that it is their image that is um, on camera, basically, rather than your students. When it comes to former students, so your students that have moved on, if you ask for content, ultimately it is they have agency at that point over their image and whether or not they want it shared. Okay, was there any other questions? Doesn't look like it. You've all seen my email because I sent the email with a reminder with a login. If you have any questions at any time, uh, just drop me a line. I don't mind answering questions offline either. Um, I'm going to reshare the screen very briefly, and Mark is going to take us through what's next.
Thank you, Sarah Jane.
Let me
Fascinating to
just,
know blue sky is the new home for all of my random thoughts. I'm yet to find a home for them, so I very much appreciate it. I've never heard of it before, so yeah, every day's a school day. Thank you everyone for being with us today. You can see on the screen that Sarah Jane is sharing our upcoming CPD that's happening and some information about upcoming events. So we have another webinar planned for about a week's time on the 23rd of January at 4 p.m. Talking about the Gatsby benchmarks and making the most of your alumni to meet those updated Gatsby benchmarks. And also just a flash forward to summer, which feels like a long way away, but it will soon be upon us, I'm sure. We have our careers guidance conference in person called Amplify Your Alumni, which again is all about how to have a thriving alumni community and to boost and support your careers provision. If you're interested in either of those events, the links are there. If you miss those links and you think later, oh, I should have clicked on them, just drop us a message. I'm sure we can send them to you. And I do recognize some of the names in the room today, but if you are already a member and you have some questions that follow up about this, then please contact your Future First membership officer who'll be more than happy to help. If you're not a member and think maybe you might be interested in finding out a bit more about what it is that we do, drop us an email. Any of the emails you have from us will end up eventually getting to me, I'm sure, and we can jump on a call and chat about exactly how that all works. But again, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. We really do appreciate it. And thank you very much, Sarah Jane, for a very informative session.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.